Okay, let's just jump right in. We were sitting here. It's Sunday, January 18th, 2026.
Right.
And look, if you have turned on a television, if you've opened a social media app, or frankly, if you've just been alive in the Western world over the last, say, 12 months, you have seen something pretty incredible happen.
hmm
We are right in the middle of what everyone is calling the Conan Renaissance.
It's undeniable. It
Yeah.
really is a fascinating cultural moment. I mean, we're talking about a man who just hosted the Oscars back in March of 2025.
And didn't just host them, he crushed it.
He absolutely did. The reviews were incredible. The ratings were the highest they've been in 5 years. And they immediately, tapped him to come back and host again in 2026.
Which never happens anymore. That job is usually a one-and-done curse.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And on top of that, he gets the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. He's inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame. And the special about the award wins an Emmy. It's a clean sweep.
It's a massive, massive victory lap. But here's the thing that gets me, the thing that makes this whole story so compelling.
Right.
If you rewind the tape, go back to 1993 or even 2010, this outcome that we're seeing now, it wasn't just unlikely, it felt completely impossible.
Oh, it was off the table. You're talking about a guy who started his on-camera career as, by his own admission, a nervous writer.
A guy who wouldn't even speak in meetings.
Yeah, and then becomes a host who was literally threatened with cancellation on a week-to-week basis for years.
Right.
And then, of course, goes through what might be the most public, most dissected firing in the history of television.
Exactly. And that right there, that's the central question for this deep dive. How does someone who the Washington Post once called, and I love this, Conan Oblivion,
So brutal.
how does that guy evolve into the longest working late night host of his generation and then pivot again to become a podcast mogul and now this universally beloved cultural icon?
That's the whole premise. And we've got a huge stack of sources in front of us. We've got biographical data. We have career histories from his time at SNL and The Simpsons. We've got those scathing 90s reviews.
Oh, they are brutal to read now.
And, of course, all the coverage of his recent triumphs. Our mission today is to really trace that red thread through Conan O'Brien's career.
To find the through line in all that chaos.
I think so. And for me, that red thread is his unique, almost uncanny ability to toggle between this incredibly highbrow intellectual humor and just the most absolute chaotic, gleeful silliness.
The smart and the stupid.
It's the smart and the stupid living in perfect harmony. But it's more than that. It's a story about resilience. It's about how he took these very public, very humiliating failures and somehow metabolized them into creative freedom.
I am so excited to get into this. I got so many fun facts pulled from these notes. We have to talk about the Ford Taurus. We have to talk about the DNA test.
Of course.
But before we get to the icon, we have to go back to the beginning because for all the wacky hair and the string dance and the absurdity, Conan's foundation is, well, it's surprisingly elite.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't understand the comedy if you don't understand the background. So Conan Christopher O'Brien, born in Brookline, Massachusetts in 1963.
Right near Boston.
And his family wasn't just your standard suburban family. His father, Thomas O'Brien, was a physician, a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, an epidemiologist, a top guy in his field.
Okay, so that's a high bar already.
And then his mother, Ruth, was a partner at Ropes & Gray, which is a major Boston law firm.
Wow. So you're talking about a high-pressure, high-achievement environment from day one. This wasn't a case of the class clown trying to get attention because he was being ignored at home.
Not at all. High achievement was the baseline. The dinner conversation in that house must have been intense.
You probably had to cite your sources just to ask for the salt.
Right. And Conan didn't rebel against that, not academically. He leaned right into it. He was the valedictorian of his high school. Then he goes to Harvard and graduates magna cum laude in history and literature.
Magna cum laude. So this is not someone who was just coasting through. He was a deeply academic person.
Deeply. And speaking of his background, you mentioned the DNA tests. We have to touch on that.
It's my favorite story. He's always joking about being aggressively, painfully Irish. So he takes a DNA test a few years back.
And the results come in.
The results come in, and he is 100% Irish Catholic.
100%.
His doctor was actually shocked. He said he'd never seen that before because usually over centuries there's some genetic drift, a little bit of this, a little of that. But nope, Conan is, genetically speaking, a perfect potato.
It explains so much. But let's look at his time at Harvard, because that's where we see the first real glimpse of the public, Conan. He joins the Harvard Lampoon,
The famous humor magazine.
the incubator for so much of modern comedy.
Yeah,
And just getting onto the Lampoon is incredibly difficult.
right.
Becoming its president is even harder. But Conan served as president twice.
Twice. That's almost unheard of.
It tells you everything you need to know about his level of obsession with the mechanics of comedy, even then.
And here's a detail that I swear it makes you feel like we're living in a simulation. At the exact same time, Conan is running the Lampoon. The president of the rival school newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, the serious paper, was a guy named Jeff Zucker.
The very same Jeff Zucker, who, decades later, as the head of NBC, would be the main architect of the whole Tonight Show debacle that almost ended Conan's career.
It's unbelievable. Their rivalry literally started in Cambridge in the early 80s with, like, prank wars between a humor magazine and a newspaper.
It's Shakespearean, really. It's this thread that runs through his whole life. But back to that smart foundation. You mentioned he graduated magna cum laude. I actually looked up his senior thesis title. Are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm so ready. Hit me with it.
It was titled Literary Progeria in the Works of William Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor.
Literary progeria. Okay.
Yeah. Progeria is a real genetic disorder that causes rapid premature aging in children. So he was writing this incredibly dense academic paper about how these Southern Gothic authors wrote characters who were essentially old children, these grotesque, wise beyond their years figures.
That is the most highbrow tweed jacket with elbow patches thing I have ever heard.
Isn't it?
But this is crucial, right? Because it proves his comedy isn't dumb by accident. It's dumb by design.
That's the whole key. That thesis title proves he has a deep understanding of structure and symbolism and deconstruction.
So when he later creates a character like, say, the masturbating bear,
It's not just a cheap, lewd joke, though it is also that. It's a subversion of what you expect to see on network television at 12:30 at night. He knows the rules so well that he just delights in breaking them.
and that academic background, that writing discipline, it leads him straight into the writers' rooms. First stop, Saturday Night Live.
Hired by Lorne Michaels in 1988. And even then, you could see his specific voice. His sketches were a little odd. He wrote Mr. Short-Term Memory, The Girl Watchers, sketch that Tom Hanks did.
Great sketches.
But he wasn't a performer, not yet. He was mostly in the background. You can actually spot him as an extra. He's a doorman in the famous Five Timers Club sketch.
No way. I have to go back and watch that.
He's there. He's just absorbing the rhythm of live TV. But the real incubator for his specific brand of chaotic absurdity was, without a doubt, The Simpsons.
Yes, he joins in 1991. And you have to remember, The Simpsons was already a huge hit, but it was still kind of grounded in this sitcom reality.
It was a family sitcom, just animated.
Right. And Conan is one of the key writers credited with pushing the show into pure surrealism,
Oh, absolutely. He wrote Marge versus the Monorail.
which is, I think, on every single list of the greatest television episodes of all time, period.
It's a masterpiece. It's a musical. It's got a guest spot from Leonard Nimoy. It's completely ridiculous and perfect.
And Homer Goes to College, another classic. But my favorite story from this era is about his first 10 minutes in The Simpsons office.
The Omen story. It's so good.
It's perfect. So he's the new guy. He's nervous. They give him an office. He leaves for just a few minutes to go get a coffee. He hears this huge crash. He comes back to his new office, and there's a hole in the window and a dead bird on the floor. A bird had literally flown through the glass and broken its neck.
Unbelievable.
And George Meyer, one of the legendary writers on the show, walks in, sees the dead bird, looks at Conan, and just says, "Man, this is some kind of weird omen."
Which is just so dark, but so funny. And it really does feel like a theme for Conan's life.
Yeah.
Chaos just seems to find him.
It really does. But he also created his own chaos in that writer's room. He had this bit he would do.
The nervous writer.
Yes, he was so anxious about pitching his jokes that to break the tension, he'd take a can of Diet Coke, shake it up, and spray it all over his own shirt.
Just drenching himself.
And then he'd pitch his jokes dripping wet and covered in soda, and the writers thought it was the funniest thing in the world.
And what's fascinating is that the nervous writer basically became his on-screen persona when he got his own show a few years later. He weaponized his own anxiety.
He monetized his anxiety, and that brings us right to the late-night gamble. It's 1993. David Letterman makes the huge move from NBC to CBS.
Leaving the 12.30 slot wide open.
And Lorne Michaels, of all people, suggests Conan to replace him. Now, you have to understand how insane this was. Conan was a writer. a producer. He was not a TV personality. The public had no idea who he was.
Zero name recognition.
Yeah.
It was a massive, massive risk for the network.
And the audition process sounds like a total fever dream. He performs a test show on the actual Tonight Show stage.
But the audience...
The audience was just the writers from The Simpsons.
Can you imagine that? You're trying to land one of the biggest jobs in television, and your audience is a bunch of cynical comedy geniuses who know every trick in the book.
They're probably rooting for you, but they are absolutely not an easy crowd.
No. And when he got the job, the reaction from the press and the public was, and I'm not exaggerating, brutal.
We mentioned Conan O'Brien from the Washington Post. That was one of the kinder ones.
It was. Critics just hated him. They said he was too smart, too intellectual, too fidgety, too weird, too East Coast.
Everything was wrong, and the network got scared. NBC was literally renewing his contract on a week-to-week basis.
That is just terrifying. I mean, think about the psychological toll of that. Every single week, you go to work thinking you're about to be fired.
They were so sure he was going to fail that for a while they had interns filling the empty seats in the audience so it wouldn't look so deserted on camera.
But that pressure cooker, that lack of job security, is exactly what forged his signature style. Because if you think you're getting canceled anyway, you have absolutely nothing to lose.
Right. If you're going down, you might as well go down doing the weirdest stuff you can think of.
Exactly. Why not do a bit where you have a picture of Bill Clinton and use Clutch Cargo-style animation to make a cutout of Robert Smigel's mouth do a hillbilly voice?
It makes no sense. It's brilliant.
And that's where he found his audience. It wasn't the mainstream. It was college kids, insomniacs, young people, and the very, very early adopters of internet culture.
It felt like a secret club. If you got it, you really got it. It was like meme culture before memes were really a thing.
It was. And speaking of things you had to see to believe, we have to talk about the old-time baseball remote piece.
Oh, yes. I genuinely believe if you want to understand Conan O'Brien's entire appeal in about 5 minutes, you just watch that sketch.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
He goes to this place where they play baseball by the original 1864 rules.
Civil War era rules.
He gets draped up in the period costume, the wool uniform, the little cap, and he just commits 110%.
He's pointing at a plane flying overhead and screaming, "What is that flying demonry?"
He's yelling at a female player to go home and churn butter. He's trying to bribe the umpire, who they call the arbiter. It is, you could argue, the single funniest remote segment ever filmed for late-night television.
And Conan himself has said, "When I die, just show this clip at my funeral. This says who I am."
It shows his greatest strength, which is improvising in a situation. He takes a scenario and he just elevates it by being both the high-status jerk and the low-status fool, sometimes in the same sentence.
And that remote really signaled a shift. People started to realize, oh, this isn't just a nervous, fidgety guy anymore. This is a comedic force.
Yeah, the show was gaining a real identity, and that identity was smartly stupid, which led to some very strange places.
You mean like Finland?
Like the entire nation of Finland, yes. The Tarja Halonen saga.
This is one of the weirdest things that's ever happened in pop culture. Someone on his staff noticed that Conan bore a striking resemblance to the then president of Finland, a woman named Tarja Halonen.
An uncanny resemblance, it has to be said.
So naturally, instead of just making a one-off joke, Conan's show starts producing and airing mock political ads in support of her re-election campaign.
And it becomes a national phenomenon in Finland. They loved it.
He eventually flew to Helsinki, and he was greeted at the airport like he was a Beatle. It was a massive event. He met the president.
And that trip to Finland, it seems like a silly one-off, but it's actually a crucial precursor to his entire later career. It was the first time we saw that his specific brand of comedy, this self-deprecating fish-out-of-water thing, it translates globally.
That's a great point. He's the universal outsider. But before we get to his global domination, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the crisis that defined a whole chapter of his life.
The Tonight Show.
The dream job.
The absolute holy grail of American comedy. For generations, that was the top of the mountain.
So let's set the scene. It's 2009. Conan's been hosting late night for 16 years. He's a beloved institution. Way back in 2004, NBC made this gentleman's agreement with him.
That in 5 years, in 2009, Jay Leno would step down and Conan would take over the Tonight Show.
Right. So Conan does everything he's supposed to do. He moves his whole family, staff, everyone from New York to Los Angeles. He buys a house. He famously brings his old 1992 Ford Taurus SHO out to the Universal Studio lot.
Which is just a classic Conan bit. He's this millionaire TV star who still drives this beat-up manual transmission Ford Taurus. It's part of that high brow, low brow thing.
It is. So he takes over the show. He even gets the nickname Coco around this time, which actually started in a Twitter tracker sketch on his show.
And then Tom Hanks came on as a guest and just started calling him Coco, and it stuck.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So everything seems perfect, the dream is realized, and it lasts for about 7 months.
The problem was fundamentally structural. NBC had made a huge, disastrous gamble by moving Jay Leno out of The Tonight Show and giving him a new show in primetime at 10:00 p.m.
The Jay Leno Show.
And it was a catastrophe. It was cheap to produce, but the ratings were terrible. And more importantly, the local affiliates were furious because it was a terrible lead-in for their 11:00 p.m. news broadcasts.
So their revenue was taking a hit. And Conan's ratings on The Tonight Show, they weren't terrible, but they were slipping a little, partly because he was getting this awful lead-in from Leno.
So NBC panics, and they come up with a solution that is, frankly, one of the most insulting proposals in TV history.
They proposed pushing The Tonight Show back from 11:35 p.m. to 12:05 a.m. to make room for a half-hour Jay Leno show at 11:35.
This right here, this is the pivotal moment. For anyone listening, you need to understand this. In show business, 99 times out of 100, the person in Conan's position takes the deal. You take the money, you keep the job, you swallow your pride, and you move to 12:05.
But Conan didn't do that.
He did not. He released this open letter, a statement to the public that I think is one of the most important documents in modern pop culture history.
I remember exactly where I was when I read it.
He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that he sincerely believed delaying The Tonight Show into the next day would seriously damage what he considered the greatest franchise in broadcasting history.
And he said, The Tonight Show at 12:05 simply isn't The Tonight Show.
He took a stand for the integrity of the institution over his own personal employment. It was an incredibly principled and incredibly risky move.
And NBC called his bluff. They decided to let him go.
They paid him a reported $45 million to walk away. And importantly, about $12 million of that was specifically earmarked to pay his staff, who are now out of a job because of this, which just shows his character.
But he was angry. You could feel it radiating off him in those last shows. And then he was legally barred from appearing on television, radio, or the internet for months.
So what does a performer do when they're told they can't perform?
He goes on the road. He launched the legally prohibited from being funny on television tour, a 30-city live comedy and music show.
And that tour and the fantastic documentary about it called Conan O'Brien Can't Stop, it really captured a man in transition. He was just fueled by this raw mix of rage and adrenaline and this desperate need to connect with an audience.
And here's the so what of it all. By being fired by NBC, Conan was inadvertently liberated. He broke out of that network host box forever.
He became an underdog. He became a martyr for creativity against corporate meddling. Losing that job ironically freed him to build his own empire.
And that leads us right into part 4, the Great Reinvention. He lands at the cable network TBS in late 2010.
Right. And TBS is cable, the ratings pressure is lower, the demographic is younger, and the creative freedom is so much higher. He hosted the show Conan there for 11 years.
And the show itself really evolved over that time.
It did. Towards the end, he moved to a half-hour format. He eventually ditched the suit and tie. He got rid of the band. He started focusing more and more on the things that he was genuinely, uniquely good at.
Which were travel and human connection.
Exactly. This is where the Conan Without Borders specials really came into their own. And some of this is, I think, the best and most meaningful television he's ever made.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, think about the places he went. He goes to Cuba in 2015. He's the first American late-night host to film there in more than 50 years.
He goes to Armenia, and he brings his longtime assistant, Sonam Osseetian, so she can connect with her ancestral heritage. It was hilarious, but also deeply moving.
And he went to Korea and visited the DMZ with the actor Steven Yeun.
That North Korea clip is wild. He and Steven Yeun are in that famous blue conference room that straddles the border, and they technically step over the line into North Korea.
And Conan just looks at the camera and says something like, the idea that you and I, a Korean American and an Irish American, could be in North Korea talking and laughing freely seems like kind of a cool message.
It was basically diplomatic work disguised as comedy. And this whole period signaled a huge shift. He moved from broadcasting, which is trying to please everyone on a big network like NBC, to narrowcasting.
A deep connection with a smaller, more loyal audience.
Right. And the ultimate vehicle for that narrowcasting, for that deep connection, it turned out not to be television at all. It was audio.
The podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. It launched in 2018.
And the premise, the title itself, is a perfect Conan joke. It's this tongue-in-cheek admission that he's this lonely, isolated celebrity who needs to make genuine friends.
But the real magic of it wasn't just the celebrity interviews. It was the chemistry between Conan Sona and his producer, Matt Gorley.
It's lightning in a bottle. Listening to it feels like you're just hanging out with your three funniest friends.
And it turns out a lot of people wanted to hang out with them. The show became an absolute juggernaut.
And a very lucrative one.
Yeah.
Which leads to the big business move. In May of 2022, he sells his entire digital media company, Team Coco, which included the podcast network and all the digital content, to SiriusXM.
For a reported $150 million.
Let's just pause on that for a second. The guy who was publicly fired and humiliated by NBC built his own independent media empire from scratch and then sold it for $150 million.
It's the ultimate revenge success story. But he didn't stop there, which brings us to right now. We are living in the icon years.
Let's just look at the run he's been on from 2024 to today.
First, he comes back to the travel format with Conan O'Brien Must Go on Max, a spiritual successor to the Without Borders specials.
But this time, with a twist. The premise was that he was visiting fans he'd actually spoken to on his podcast in places like Norway and Argentina and Thailand. It brilliantly bridged the gap between his podcast audience and his visual comedy.
And then his appearance on the web series Hot Ones in 2024.
Oh, that was a cultural
A
moment.
huge moment. I have seen a lot of celebrities eat spicy wings on that show. I have never seen a performance like Conan's.
He wasn't just eating them, he was attacking them. He was deconstructing the entire format of the show while participating in it. He was rubbing hot sauce in his own eye.
He was doing a bit where his personal doctor was taking his vitals as he ate. It was pure, uncut, chaotic Conan energy at its absolute finest. And it introduced him to a whole new generation of Gen Z viewers who maybe didn't grow up with him on late night.
That performance was a reminder to everyone. Oh, right. This guy isn't just a talk show host. He might be the best physical comedian working today.
And that set the stage for this incredible run of accolades, hosting the Oscars in March 2025.
Which, as we said, is usually a thankless job.
Yeah.
But he was seen as a critical success. He brought back a level of old-school showmanship with a very modern, self-aware edge.
He can make fun of the celebrities in the room without ever being cruel, which is such a hard line to walk.
And that's why they asked him back for 2026. And then you add in the hardware, the Emmy for the Mark Twain Prize special, the induction into the Hall of Fame. It feels like the entire industry finally caught up to what his hardcore fans have known for decades.
He just outlasted all the criticism.
He did. You know, when you look back at this whole trajectory, from the nervous writer spilling Diet Coke on himself to the Hall of Fame inductee hosting the Oscars, there is a consistent philosophy there.
What do you think that is?
When he gave his farewell speech on TBS in 2021, he described his guiding principle, his entire style, as the pursuit of the strange, phantom intersection between smart and stupid.
I love that phrase.
And I think he finally found it. He's the guy who can write a thesis on William Faulkner and also voice the Riddler in the Lego Batman movie.
Right.
Or play a character in the video game Death Stranding. Or play Andy Warhol in the Weird Al movie. He just refuses to pick a lane.
And I think that's why we love him. He gives all of his permission to be both smart and stupid at the same time.
I think you're right.
Before we wrap this up, I want to go back to something he said in his Tonight Show farewell speech in 2010. It's one of my favorite quotes.
I know exactly the one you mean.
He was at this professional low point, and he said to the audience, "Nobody in life gets exactly what they thought they were going to get. But if you work really hard and you're kind, amazing things will happen."
And at the time, you know, to a cynical observer, it might have sounded a little earnest, maybe a little naive.
Sure.
But looking at where he is now, in 2026, with all this success, it wasn't naive at all. It was prophetic. He didn't get the Tonight Show, the one thing he thought he always wanted. He got something so much better.
He got autonomy.
He got autonomy. He got $150 million. And he got the freedom to be exactly who he is without a network executive looking over his shoulder.
Which really raises that big, provocative question for the listener to think about. Was losing The Tonight Show actually the best thing that ever happened to Conan O'Brien?
I would argue, and I think the evidence is overwhelming, that yes, it was 100%. If he had stayed at NBC, he would have been constrained by that format forever. He'd still be the guy in the suit doing the monologue every night at 11:35.
He would have been preserved in amber.
Perfectly put. By getting pushed out, he was forced to evolve. He had to embrace the internet and travel and podcasting years before any of his peers did. He became future-proof, because the past rejected him.
That is such a powerful thought. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the very thing that sets you free.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think that's where we'll leave it. We hope this deep dive encourages you to maybe go out and find your own phantom intersection between smart and stupid. Don't be afraid to be the nervous writer. And hey, if a bird flies through your office window, maybe it's just the beginning of a really great story. Thanks for listening.
Keep it weird, everyone.